So our third story is titled What It Means to Be a Man by Ed Bok Lee, and this is the story I chose for us. This story first appeared in Waterstone Review in 2011, and that's the literary journal out of Hamline University, so I was actually on the editorial board the year that the story was published, and then it was republished online in Sleep Magazine, which is where you all can find it. And so Ed Bok Lee is a local writer. The story is set in Minneapolis and south of here in the countryside in Hastings. So it was really fun for me to read this and know all of the place names because they are real. And also I think the world is interesting because although it's my city, it's not necessarily my world because it's not my culture. So that was enjoyable. I love the language that Ed Bok Lee uses. I love the narrative voice and the dialogue. This is first person, so he does a great job having a first-person narrator, which presents its own special challenges. Not every character can actually tell a story well. You've got to do mood, atmosphere, backstory, context, all sorts of things that characters who are only concerned with the action in the moment do. So that's something I love about this story. And it's a complex, thought-provoking, difficult story. Kathryn's nodding vigorously. Yes, it is. I read
this story and I was like, oh!
Yeah.
I know.
It's a very difficult topic to
it is.
cover.
Yeah, it's
cover
challenging.
Sympathetically, especially.
Right. And so I have a funny little aside about this. So the Waterstone Review experience at Hamline, my first year I was just on the editorial board, and that was this year. And the second year I was the fiction assistant editor. And each year we look at the Pushcart Prize anthology to see examples of really great literary fiction that's come out in journals over the previous year. And it seems like every year there's some theme in the air, and all of the stories have something to do with this. And we saw it in our submissions as well. So like this year, the submissions all had to do with animal cruelty. I mean, not all of them, but a weirdly high number had to do with animal cruelty. And the second year I was on the board, a lot of our submissions were young men coming of age stories that had to do with hand jobs or blow jobs. And we're just like, really? Like, where does this come from? Not that you can't have animal cruelty or, coming of age stories, but it's like, okay, that's odd. It's in the water. Definitely. Yes. So now that I've shocked everyone with my funny aside. Do either of you want to give your impressions? Start us off.
Well, like the last story we discussed, this one has an awesome twist in it that I thought was just great. I did not see it coming at all. And the narrator is really interesting. Mm-hmm. And I think most men I know can relate to the moody teenage son in here, and you don't really know when happen, but it becomes pretty clear and then it gets dark. But I thought he treated it really well.
You broke up a little bit. You never know when it happens. What?
I think I said that you don't know when it starts, where it's going to go. Like it might be dark, it might be light, and then it takes a real dark turn when you realize that they're taking the puppies down to Hastings to trade them, in recompense for the dog fighting that the kid was doing, and that whole thing comes out really smoothly. So yeah, I really liked it, and also like you said, the dialogue's great. It's very powerful.
It is.
Foul language, if you don't like that thing in your stories, I don't think you'll like this story. But I like the gritty realness of it.
Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit because I think it's so interesting. I said, even though this is my city, it's not necessarily my culture. And I don't just mean urban or economic class or race. I mean, like, these are people who fight dogs and they're going down to a rural area, as you said, to trade a puppy. So, okay, the young man, the son, or Jorge is his name, was fighting his dogs, and his dog lost, so he shot the winning dog. And obviously the winning dog killed his dog, because it was a dog fight. So now Jorge's sister's boyfriend, who is the narrator, who's in the fatherhood role with this boy, is driving him to the country to give up one of his puppies, to compensate for shooting this man's dog. And I hate animal cruelty. I'm such an animal lover. So culturally, it's amazing to me that Ed Bok Lee wrote a story where I was engaged with and empathizing with and rooting for characters who are so blasé about something like throwing dogs into a room together and having them tear each other's throats out. Right? That's a pretty amazing feat for any writer.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense story. Also, like the things where, you're saying it's not my culture, it's not my world, even though you live in Minneapolis. Like, just the dialogue here, like he still had that 22 he picked up from a meth head neighbor a few months earlier. And then it's the conversation between his sister, who owns the house he lives in, and him. Says, if you climb out that window upstairs one more time, don't bother ever coming back. I pay rent. You contribute to this family. I guess we all better take a chill pill, I said. Take this little shit out of my sight, right? Like, it's really fraught with tension, and I think that people who have been in a house like that or lived in a house like that will definitely be able to relate to it. But I don't think most people reading literary journals have had that experience. So, it's probably very shocking for a lot of people.
Definitely.
And also, like, they're mean to each other. They're like half sister, half brother, and they're really cruel to each other. And then there's like the boyfriend, and I mean, we see this kind of stuff in movies on TV all the time, but stories go deeper than that sometimes, right?
Right. They do. Well, and despite that cruelty, I felt like they love each other, which is, which is the feat of the writer. Yeah, it's like I can't imagine speaking to a family member that way or being spoken to that way. So that's where the cultural divide is. But as I read it, I saw that Donita loves her brother and she's taking care of him. And this is how they relate to each other. And it's, like if I saw two people on the street or in a restaurant and they spoke those lines to each other, I would probably be like, whoa, that's like so not okay. But in the context of this story where I'm peeking into their life, I had a totally different experience of feeling how much they care for each other and how supportive she is of her little brother. And, the narrator, how far he's willing to go to express his love for this woman. And it's hurtful at the end when Jorge tells him, she's just using you. You're just a babysitter. Right, but doesn't he
have a witty response to that? I don't remember what it was. I'm going to have to go find it.
Well, he had just imagined them being married.
Right. So Jorge fell quiet for several seconds. I ain't going in there. Then don't, I said, without looking back. excuse my language, fuck you for bringing me here. Thanks, but I already got your sister to do that, and hers is a lot nicer than your ugly fucked up face. You're making a big mistake, you know? So it's like, yeah, he's jabbing him for dating his sister, but at the same time, the narrator has the confidence where he's like, okay, this is just this punk kid talking to me. I have my own confidence. I already know what it means to be a man. Now I have to show this little punk what it means. And to touch on that thing you said about the narrator earlier, he's a great choice for a narrator because he's the outsider in this situation. So just like with a story like The Great Gatsby, where the narrator in that story is outside of the situation, kind of looking in, this narrator is kind of in a similar situation where he's come into their household from the outside because he's dating this kid's sister. And so he has the outsider perspective. And so when he explains like the backstory, how they're related, where they come from, you know, it's coming from an outsider perspective. So maybe that allows the reader, who is also an outsider, to sympathize more easily and more readily when he sees it through the narrator's eyes, as opposed to, you know, if this story was told from Jorge's perspective, totally different story, right?
Right. Well, and Jorge is one of those characters who couldn't narrate a story. He's not reflective enough or aware enough. And so this narrator, one of the things that makes him so great is that he straddles that divine between us readers of literary journals and the other characters he's interacting with in the action on the page, because he has to be able to provide things like the dialogue between him and Jorge and Alida, and describe her kitchen with the garbage can overflowing with paper plates, and then describe the old Swedish farmer and his rather strange son and the pole barn and, you know, countryside. And then he has these reflective moments. Meanwhile, on either side of us, green pasture lands unfurled for a long time and then scabbed slowly over into outlet malls, a water tower, asphalt, passing cars, buildings, more fields, more cars, another water tower. A faded Rolodex of billboards, concrete park steeples, a far night-lit downtown. More neon and incandescent high-rises and billboards and trash and asphalt and strip malls and bars and clubs and schools and anonymous buildings and bodies, basements and churches, and all the other hidden altars people seek when they need to corner something to believe in, better than themselves. I mean, that's powerful. That is rich emotive language, and he slides us into it by giving us this view of the scenery he's driving through, and then that reflective piece of what's going on inside him. And it's not even so much thoughts as a knowing, you know, and that's the power of narrative voice.
Yeah, and he kind of goes back into that where he says, like, he's describing, so the story is called What It Means to Be a Man, right? So he's teaching Jorge what it means to be a man, but he's also reminding himself what it is, because he's taking the responsibility on to take this kid and teach him something. It's almost like he needs a reminder of that lesson too. So when he says, I had a pair of gloves in my pocket next to my gun and thought of slipping them on just in case, my heart was thudding, and the pups seemed to know something strange was about to happen. They shuffled quietly, eyeing me like I was the wrong and only God. And then he gets kind of distant, and he says, we're all of us given a destiny, like a race and parents and language and a roulette wheel of beliefs and ideas. And the best you can do is not look too hard and hopeful as someone else with a half smirk spins the thing.
Yeah, wow. That is powerful. The wrong and awful God, and he is spinning the roulette wheel for the puppies because they're going to hand over one and take the rest home. So what are, Kathryn, do you want to say anything? I feel like we've been...
No, it's good. I felt like the narrator was actually the one who needed to be taught what being a man was. I think that his statement that he was going to go show him what it means to be a man was really a lot of dramatic irony. Because like you look at him in his life and what he's doing and how he's taking responsibility, and I just kind of was like, yeah, you don't, it's not really about you being a man so much as by the end I feel like he's learned a really important lesson. And I think the farmer, the old farmer, is the only one who really has that in the whole story, and that he is teaching all three of them a lesson by making them drown that poor puppy. But I mean,
really?
I know, that made me sad. I got done reading this and I wanted to email you, Alida, and be like, really?
I'm sorry, did I traumatize you?
I was not expecting that. I was like skimming through it going, oh my gosh. But anyway.
I know,
think
it's awful.
I think that there's a lot in the first couple pages that has that dramatic irony where you're watching him going, really? Okay. Like, we'll see how this happens, because I really felt like not until the very end at that twist where he kind of shifts a little bit and you see him taking a different kind of a viewpoint on the way back. And I think that was really important to me, to be like, okay, I see, like, realistically, we're watching this narrator figure out what it means to be a man.
Right. Well, the old farmer, Reiner Tollefson Sr., is so cruel that I don't think he is what it means to be a man. I think all of them are wrong. You know, so if you haven't read the story yet, the old farmer takes his son's new puppy and makes his son drown it as punishment for his dogfighting wicked ways. I feel like at the end, the narrator is driving home and he's realizing what it means to be a man is not this. It's not dogfighting. It's not carrying a gun. It's not drowning puppies. It's not...
Right. That turning point, though, where he has to experience that, that's where he gets that push into seeing what it really means to be a man. It's not just facing the consequences, but actually dealing with the results of your consequences and all the other things that go along with it. It's taking responsibility for more than just that one action, because I feel like the whole time we're taking responsibility for that one action, like this piece of time that happened with this dog, and then him realizing there's so much more than that is a consequence to the whole lifestyle and the way of being. And like that to me was where he had that kind of switch go off. And before that, it was almost like he was a little too shallow about it. And then he kind of hits that point and it turns.
Well, I think he thought it was going to be easy. You drive up, you say you're sorry, you hand over a puppy and you leave. And then it all like unfurls into this really traumatic experience for all of them, I think. Maybe not Reiner Sr., because he was behind it all. But the other three were shocked out of their complacency.
Yeah, it's almost like the narrator thought he knew, and then he went to go prove it to himself, and then he realized that he was maybe wrong.
Right.
Or that it was more complex than he thought it was originally. And he's like, I'm going to go teach this kid what it means to be a man. And then he's like, oh, shit. Didn't know we were going to be drowning puppies with our hands today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think he means by the hidden altars people seek when they need to corner something to believe in better than themselves?
And I guess he's probably speaking to his own experience, right? It's like, I needed something to believe in that was better than my situation, and so I tried to teach this kid something, and to take him to this hidden altar of manhood, and I needed something to believe in that was better than me, the narrator. And maybe I didn't find it. Maybe it was a fake altar. Maybe it was a mirage.
Yeah, I think one of the great successes of any story is when after you read it, you feel like that character is never going to be the same again. Like there's no way he can go back from this experience and continue living life the way he has been.
Right.
So I feel like while just a page or two ago he was imagining marrying Donita and their life together forever, I feel like after this he's going to walk away from it all and have to start over.
Right. And that sentence comes right after that really beautiful description of the city as he's driving back into it. And so it's like he's realized what that all those outward trappings really mean. It's just people trying to escape from truths and cornering themselves away from the world as it actually is into these little boxes, or he talks about the billboards and the high rises and the trash and the asphalt and the strip malls and the bars and the clubs and the schools, like all these things that people try to encapsulate themselves in so that they don't have to face things that are outside of that little corner of the world. And he's just had to face something that he never anticipated facing because of the corner of the world he put himself in.
Right.
And so I think that's, like you said, kind of breaking out of that and saying, look at all these things that we try to believe in because we want to think that they're better than we are. And he's kind of rejecting that.
Yeah. I think you're right. He went out there to prove something and teach something, and instead it's like he was stripped naked, It's like, look at how similar all of these people are, the life's lessons, the cruel lessons, whether you're a young urban person of color or a 80-year-old Swedish farmer in Hastings. Look at how much the same you are too, which is really...
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the irony, of course, is that the guy who owned the farm could have been a better man, right? But he just happened to drive to the one place where he got reminded where he came from, or what he was trying to escape. He's like, I'm going to go out here and show him what it really means to be a man, because in our life, he doesn't have that example, and he's trying to teach him by example. And he goes and he finds this farmer who makes his son drown a puppy. Like, that's the worst possible outcome that you could possibly think of in that situation. Why couldn't he find like a good, kind man?
Right. Because our narrator's goal is to make Jorge seek restitution, to raise himself, and it backfires because the guy at the other end of the deal
is just as bad
as everybody they just left behind in the city. Yeah, that's a really good point, Matt.
And he thought it was going to end when he knocked on the door and said, we got these puppies, you just take one and we'll be done with it. And then that is, that's not the end. That's the beginning of the third act.
It is, yeah. And he thought they understood each other when the farmer walks out with him to the car. He's like, we have an understanding, this is cool.
And how wrong he was.
Wow. So, final thoughts, guys?
Yeah. This is always an interesting question, what it means to be a man. Did anybody find out in that story what it means to be a man? I don't know.
No.
I think it's a process, and I think they got one step. There was a step
it's like this quality that everybody's looking for, right? Every man is looking for, and it's just really hard to define and quantify, and you think you know it, and it slips through your grasp, and it's elusive, and I mean, maybe that's the lesson, is that there is no one good way to be a man, right? We're all trying to do our best here. Goodbye.
Yeah, sometimes. I feel like the narrator had an epiphany, though, that driving home and processing all of this, not even that he necessarily knows what the epiphany is, but that he can never go back. Yeah, something shifted inside of him, and it can never be the same again for him.
Right.
I'm sure it would have spoiled the story too if he told you like what the epiphany was, right? Because you're supposed to experience it and then say like, okay, I just experienced that as this character. What did I learn from it, right? And that's why he ends there instead of going on and explaining what the narrator learned and how he's going to leave Alida or not leave her or marry her or like whatever, whatever epiphany he came to. You don't really know,
right?
But that's so intentional, right? Like you want to leave the reader with that. That I don't care. 4 windows down, radio blaring, all this stuff blurring by you as you're speeding down the highway, and then make the reader answer that question. What did he actually learn? What does it mean to be a man?
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting too that he drives out of the city. Like Jorge could have shot a guy's dog who lives in St. Paul instead of Minneapolis, but it's not an urban person and an urban person. He drives to a farm outside of Hastings, and the senior and junior Tollefson have separate farms, so there are even two farms, and it's fields, and it's, so just by leaving one place that doesn't necessarily change the people you encounter.
Right.
It's just as cruel in the country as in the city.
He's going right back into the city.
Mm-hmm. He is, yeah, and he gives us the progression of how the buildings change as you drive that highway into town.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe the moral of the story is nothing's as easy as you think it's going to be. You still have to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. And this has been another episode of the Storyworks Roundtable. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to join Storyworks Writers, our Facebook group, so we can have conversations. Bring your coffee, bring your questions, your ideas, and meet us there.